We'll have Professor Nicolas Vella joining us from the doctoral school to talk about career development. And the last presentation of the day is from Professor Nicolas Vella, the director of our doctoral school at the University of Malta, who will talk about career development for researchers and the support they offer. Okay.
Good afternoon. I have been asked by RSSD to deliver this presentation as part of Grants Week, and it is essentially geared for doctoral researchers and for doctoral researchers to get to know a little bit about career development, which we offer as a doctoral school. So essentially, I'm going to take you through these 4 points in this presentation. The need for professional development as part of the doctoral journey, assessing needs, what can we offer as a doctoral school, and what we are currently working on. The need for career development for doctoral researchers really and truly came to the fore during a lot of discussions that were held as part of the European Universities Association Council for Doctoral Education. In the early noughties, there was the need was felt that doctoral education had to undergo a particular type of reform that was looking not just at the PhD or any type of doctorate as an end product, as traditionally understood, but looking at it a little bit more widely. And in fact, this resulted in 2005 in the so-called Salzburg recommendations, of which, and these recommendations, as you can see, career development was high on the agenda, recognizing, in other words, that getting a doctorate, which is a period of study spent undergoing independent research, followed by a supervisor or a supervisory team, was not the end of the journey, because statistics clearly show that 1 in 5 PhD holders on graduation do not stay in academia or in research, and therefore they have the challenge to use the skills that they have taken on board as part of the doctoral journey and use them elsewhere. And in actual fact, as you can see, the blurb from the recommendations, which were then followed up in 2012 by taking stock of whether things worked or not, it is very clear. While the doctoral candidate, it says here, is responsible for their career choices, given the situation on the labor market, it is the institution's responsibility to provide support structures for professional development. Offering training in transferable skills, including understanding the ethics of research, is central and should be a priority for doctoral schools and programs. Professional development of doctoral candidates includes awareness about skills attained through doing research, as well as of the wide range of career choices for doctorate holders. Building ties to the other sectors contributes to bridging the communication gap with potential employers and recruiters. The writing was very, very clear. And the beauty about the meetings of the CDE, of the Council for Doctoral Education, which now brings together more than 60% of all doctoral schools in the major European universities, is that these are recommendations from the bottom up. And because of the regular meetings of the CDE, to which most professionals go to, there is a sharing of best practice. And unfortunately, of course, the pandemic resulted in meetings happening online, but I cannot say that they have been as successful as regular meetings, where most of the networking would take place on the margin of these events. Of course, I'm talking of 2005. As you know, doctoral schools have been around, especially in America, for far longer, but they are more common. They have been more common in Europe in the last 20 years. The picture that you see down below is taken here, 1 floor down, 3 years ago in January, when the CDE held its annual meeting to discuss how successful the reforms, the European reforms in doctoral education were actually felt to be. And the reason why we hosted them here is because a month earlier, the doctoral school at the University of Malta was set up. So we're only a very young support structure. It was the brainchild of the present rector, who had been pro-rector for academic affairs and therefore had been attending meetings of the CDE regularly. And he knew and believed in the added value that doctoral researchers could have by having an institution-wide doctoral school. It wasn't easy. Actually, it was an uphill struggle to convince faculties, institutes, and centers that a doctoral school would take nothing from the formal training that happens at faculty level when doctoral researchers undertake their work. But this was a bonus. This was something which is of added value. We started off despite the teething problems that we had in the beginning, but I have to say that 4 years down the line, certainly for the researchers, we feel that this has been a success story. And I'm saying this based on the feedback that we receive from doctoral researchers regularly. Assessing what the needs are is, of course, something that, in my view, should happen formally. In other words, having a personal study plan when you embark on the PhD. At the University of Malta, this is not formalized, but it doesn't mean that we do not instruct students that together with the supervisor or supervisory team, they come up with a study plan. Of course, answering the nasty question there, what shall I do with my PhD, is something that has to be foremost in the mind of the young researcher or the not so young researcher. About 50% of our researchers are, 53% of our researchers are part-timers. Okay, 47% are full-timers. Full-timers means that some of them can actually do up to 19 hours of paid work. Okay, so it is not what we believe a full-time job should be, doing nothing but the doctorate. That is where we should be, aiming. But the elephant in the room has always been not specifying the fact that the number of opportunities locally. But of course, hearing Lily speak, the world is one's oyster, and you can actually spread. We can actually spread our horizon in looking at what is available abroad, and then the chances are, of course, much better, because it is not one market that can take our skills, our competencies, our knowledge, etc. But the market is much wider. Positioning yourself in this market is something that, well, this program, Grants Week, is there for a particular purpose. So getting to grips with this is going to be important. As I said, the writing is on the wall. We all know, you read any editorial of any scientific journal of repute, and we have it there. What can one do with a PhD? And the other side of the story is, how do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of our researchers so that our mental well-being is as it should be? Because the amount of pressure that we face is immense. Again, this is another elephant in the room that many people do not want to talk about, but I do, because attaining a balance while undertaking a doctorate, especially if you have caring skills, is something, caring conscience is something that we ought to think about. Well, we know what the milestones are. If we are undertaking doctoral research, certainly at the University of Malta, these are regulated by the university rules and regulations. Remember, the regulations, every single regulation of the University of Malta is actually part of the laws of the country. Okay? It's part of the laws of the country. Every time that we want to change something, it has to be a legal notice. Okay? This is extraordinary when you think about it, because there are many institutions of higher learning in this country that do not have to go through this, which means, therefore, that our sense of responsibility and obligation towards our clients, who are the students, is even bigger, because you cannot possibly keep on changing regulations every other day, as it were. We're in the process, for instance, of revising the PhD regulations, which were enacted in 2008, and now these are more than 10 years old. So it is timely that we look back. So in other words, if I were to introduce, for instance, the possibility of obtaining a PhD pipe application, I cannot just do it like this, because that will need changing the current regulations. It has to go through Senate, then it has to go to Council, and then it will appear in the Government Gazette once it is taken as part of the laws of the country. So the process is what it is. The first step, the submission of the application for PhD, is the most important, because that is where you will figure out whether the institution is the right one, which can give you the backing and the support required in order to undertake the journey. And of course, that depends also on the supervisor or supervisors who are there to guide you during this process. I will not go into the chemistry of how supervision should work. It is important, and that to me is the important step where we decide on a personal study plan, on where we see ourselves heading in 3 years' time, so that no time is actually wasted. What we can offer as a doctoral school is certainly something that did not exist 4 years ago, certainly not in a formal manner, right across faculties, right across institutes and centers and school. We have only one school at the university at the moment, that's the School for Performing Arts. And we put together a professional development program for researchers. We did not reinvent the wheel. These programs are offered by most graduate schools abroad, by most doctoral schools abroad. When I started off as a director, I traveled to 3 universities abroad to see what they do. I met with the staff who manage doctoral schools. Incidentally, most of them have PhDs, even though they are admin staff, as they should be. We should walk the talk, no? If we think that PhD holders should run the show because they have competencies, then we should employ them and pay them well for what they do. We offer this program every academic year, and we publish the program in late September, and a timetable for the first semester and for the second semester. Briefly, I can tell you that the workshops that are organized, that are either of 3 hours duration or 6 hours duration, fall into these categories. There are general workshops. I will tell you in a second what they consist of. Workshops that deal with writing and communication, workshops that deal with research, and by research I mean research methods as well, integrity and valorization, personal development, and also an attempt to look beyond graduation. You have an idea here. The writing is small, but we have different workshops. You can download the program that we offered last year from that website, www.umedumt.com/doctoral school/professional development. And we essentially offer workshops even based on the feedback that we get. Recently, we had one student from the Netherlands telling us, look, it's good to tell us how to communicate research to audiences through standard media, but I am far more interested to do it via social media. Can't you deliver something for the purpose? And in actual fact, hopefully, come October, we will be able to offer something on those lines. These are about 50 workshops that are offered, mostly through academics at the university, chosen, it's not an open call, chosen because of their competence, but also the flair, the attitude. I make no secret about it, and also because they are committed to their doctoral researchers. And of course, the feedback that comes in tells us whether we are doing it rightly or whether we need to tweak. I would like to see some of these workshops as compulsory. For instance, the workshop on research integrity, to me, is fundamental, so that people, well, students, researchers know exactly what they are going in for. But of course, these workshops at the moment are not compulsory, and they do not hold credit value, because Europe-wide it was agreed that professional development programs like ours should not come with a credit value attached to them, so that it is really up to students to follow them. And we can, we keep on adding to our suite of workshops depending on the feedback. We are going to offer one in October, which is how you can present your research in 180 seconds. The 3-minute thesis is a trademark competition. We have turned it over, as many doctoral schools have done, turning it into 180 seconds, and is going to be delivered by a performance coach who has a PhD herself. In other words, hopefully we will be able to gear one day towards not only a doctoral prize, an annual doctoral prize, but also a competition which is based on presenting research concisely to a diverse audience. We are conscious that where there is taxpayer money involved in funding research, then that research has to be brought to the attention of as wide an audience as possible. And of course, if I had to do it, it would be daft not to follow one of these workshops in order to learn how it should be done and done properly. Well, I invite you to have a look at what is being offered at the moment. We also hold an annual doctoral symposium. Of course, symposia and seminars are held at faculty level. In fact, I always check with faculties to see whether the doctoral candidates have an opportunity to share their research results, concerns, together with an audience that they are familiar with. In other words, at the level of the department, or better still, at the level of the faculty. Okay, this does not replace what happens at the level of the faculty. And I know that certain faculties do this regularly. For instance, the pharmacy lot have an annual symposium, which is attended by most final year students and graduate students, including also their professional doctorate students. The only professional doctorate that we have is currently in pharmacy. And that is a success story. But of course, we have many institutes, 50 institutes at the university, where we have very often 1 or 2 students studying on their own. And unfortunately, they do not get to be part of a larger family. And the symposium that we started 3 years ago is intended for that purpose. Am I happy with what is being achieved at the moment? Well, no, because I would be happy if the students had to organize this event themselves rather than waiting for the doctoral school to do it for them. Why is the situation as is? Well, because, and the pandemic, of course, did not help, many students happen to be working away from the campus, and there are specific reasons why this is so, and they are often not part of a larger research group. We're going to try to break that. In actual fact, well, we started with this, and we attract about 120 participants, and we usually have about 20 or 25 speakers, and it's far more challenging in this case because you get researchers talking to really diverse audiences. But it's working, and the advantage of the pandemic is that we also invited co-supervisors. Most students have co-supervisors at foreign universities to participate in this event because they can do it. We were doing it all online. So there's always a silver lining to the odd situation that we have found ourselves in. We would like to even make it better, because the best thing would be to invite critical friends of a member of the supervisory team, or indeed your own researcher friends from abroad, to participate, so that they can actually do the grilling. Because really and truly, events like this are perfect for when you come to defend the thesis at the end of the journey. We're also using the doctoral school and the annual symposium as an opportunity to reflect on doctoral education. And therefore we have keynote speakers who can share with us their experience about different aspects of doctoral research. We started off with a very fine presentation by Ivan Kalous, Professor of English in the Faculty of Arts in the first year. We followed that with a presentation from a colleague from Israel about the question of doctorateness. In other words, what are the characteristics that define the doctorate, in this case, the PhD, and that raised some eyebrows, of course. But the person who raised most eyebrows was last a couple of months ago, and that was Professor Russell Smith from our Center for Entrepreneurship and Business Incubation, who gave his annual lecture called Everyone Runs a Business. And the barrage and the feedback on Facebook that followed the announcement of this annual lecture really showed how academics, rather than doctoral researchers, are cut off from the reality. And the reality is that there is a world beyond the PhD that requires thinking a little bit outside the box if you want to make a career out of the PhD. It's a sine qua non for somebody like Russ to talk in the way he does. It's a sine qua non for somebody who comes from a particular field and frame of mind, but from somebody from the humanities to realize that they can actually sell know-how is staggering. I would call them purists. I come from the Faculty of Arts, but I can sell a service and quite a bit of money if I want to. And I am in the field of cultural heritage, you know, which is hardly tops for making money. But you can do it if you do it well. What are we working on? Because I really want to give researchers a taste for what is ahead. Well, fostering a research atmosphere on campus is something that we have been yearning for. And the picture in the middle there is of the sustainable living complex that is currently being built at breakneck speed, because otherwise we lose European funding for it, on the edge of campus. And I have been promised that the doctoral school will have space over there. And what I am really after is a space where researchers can mingle. Because I really think that if researchers, and here I mean even postdocs, of course, if they meet, the future can be brighter. The other day I was giving the workshop starting on your PhD to one cohort, and I had a student who was looking at the stress levels in researchers, and I said how exciting and how interesting. 3 months later, I was giving the same workshop, and one student told me, I am developing the app to measure the stress levels on researchers. So I brought them together because I could see that there is a business idea at the end of the PhD, of both PhDs, if they actually join forces. But if these two guys do not meet, or if we do not find ways of actually increasing the visibility of doctoral research, this is going to be a lost opportunity. The opportunities are huge, but we really need to know what the others are doing. In time of crisis, and because we do not have a place where students can mingle, two doctoral researchers at the Faculty for Social Wellbeing, who are professional counselors, by the way, set up a virtual cafe where doctoral researchers could meet. The numbers are very small, unfortunately, which is something that is perhaps might not come as a full surprise. Why? Because most students who are local have a family network to fall back on. For those of us who studied abroad, they know perfectly well that usually that network consists of your student colleagues, but then there are professionals who can help you if you need that help. And of course, the virtual cafe was meant for that purpose. And you realize that there are academics at the university who obviously are busy with their own PhD, who are happy to give up some of the time to help others. And that for me is why I see the doctoral school as having been such a success story over the last 4 years. We would like to track the career paths of doctoral alumni. There is an exercise that is currently being carried out by MCST, as you probably know, Lily. It hasn't been easy to monitor the career paths of doctoral alumni, even because the blessed GDPR has thrown a lot of things in the spokes of the wheel, as it were. But we have to try and do better. This is something that is affecting Europeans all over, and we need to find ways and means of understanding how alumni look back at the training they have received, so that we understand what the lacunae are, what the success stories are, etc. The final point is about aligning the needs of industry with doctoral programs. I think gone are the days when we can locate ourselves in a silo and not look out to see what society and industry are expecting from doctoral holders. And we have an Erasmus Plus project called CEU Doc. It forms part of the CEU Alliance, about which you will hear in the next few days. And this is looking at specifically at doctoral research and how we understand what doctoral alumni can tell us about their own experience. We listen to what industry expects from doctoral alumni, targeting marine sciences, admittedly, as a project, and finding the best way of creating a network, a sort of LinkedIn, but specific to the needs of marine sciences, and reflect on this. The other day we had a fantastic training event for our PhD students, where they had stories from holders of PhDs who have gone away from academia. Some of them still work at universities, but in administration. Some of them work in industry. And we had 3 lovely stories, one from a shepherd who holds a PhD, one from an organic farmer who holds a PhD, and one from another organic farmer who holds a PhD. And the idea behind the presentations was to convince students, first of all, that there is a life after a PhD. Number one. Number two, what was useful, and applying for grants, in other words, to sustain their activities, was stop. They said, I received this amazing training. I know how to fill in an application in order to receive money, and I could use it 10 years later for the purposes of having a business. And students left shocked by what they heard, because they never realized that there was another world. Now, of course, the idea is to stay in research if you can. But if you are consciously aware that if you see an opportunity for some sort of training so that your career develops in a way which does not simply is stuck in a rut that tries to emulate your supervisor and the environment in which you have been close to him or to her for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 years, that is, I think, healthy. This is what we are currently working on. I cannot say it is easy, because there are mentalities that require changing. There are regulations that require changing. There are senators who require convincing, etc., etc. But I think we will get there. I urge you to have a look at our website, www.umedu.edu mt/doctoral school and to visit our office on campus. This is the small team that makes up the doctoral school, and we will try to answer your query, as we have been doing with the 455 doctoral students that at the moment are doing their studies at the University of Malta. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer them. Yes.
Thank you, Nicola, for this very useful and interesting presentation. I hear with interest your initiative on the virtual coffee for researchers and etc. I fully endorse that because speaking from my experience on when I try to coach and train researchers on how to conduct research better through funding, I always encourage them to talk, to share their ideas, and I give as an example the Medici effect. What is the Medici effect? The Medici effect is we know the Medici family were in the Renaissance period. They were the ones that actually offered to all the great minds during that time free accommodation and free food. So during this coffee time, let's call it lunchtime, all these great minds, what they were doing from different disciplines, they were sharing their ideas, they were sharing their concerns, they were sharing their problems, their knowledge, and this kind of sharing of different ideas, material from different disciplines created that explosion of new knowledge. So that's why we had the Renaissance and the Renaissance period created. So based on that, I would like to insist a little more and actually have a discussion or examine why this coffee or that kind of virtual sessions haven't been explored more effectively. Because to my view, this group dynamics is something that should be facilitated and fostered for successful career paths of researchers. I do know that meeting someone virtually, of course, is not the best way. It's by far better to have a face-to-face interaction. And this is actually one of the reasons that I came here from Greece instead of participating virtually. But still, with the post-COVID period, we need to find new ways how we're going to support that kind of virtual gathering and exchange of sharing of ideas in order to create a virtual Medici effect in the near future. So I would like to share your views on that. What do you think could be done in order to have that?
I have to confess something over here, okay? I've got, as probably many of you here, we have all come out of a year where things have had to go online. I have had to teach undergraduates and postgraduates. I insisted on physical and online. Even when there was nobody, I would still go and do a class physically. And then after March, certainly of this year, I had to move completely online. So I managed to find a screen this big and put it into my office so that I could see students. And the exercise went on. And the way I interact with my students is to try and not only break the barrier, which is usually physical barrier, but even virtual, which is even more challenging. However, I noticed one thing during this exercise is that in certain cases there was really no barrier whatsoever. The barrier collapsed completely because you were in the comfort of one's home and you were seeing a person not face to face. You could not see a grimace. You could not see the reaction of of my hands if they are stuck together, if I'm becoming impatient. That was lost completely. And therefore, those who are not aware of these tiny reactions of our body just went on and on and on. And this did not happen only to students, but it happened also in the highest governing body of the university, and I'm talking about Senate. The respect that there should be when colleagues talk collapsed entirely. And I was amazed, I was shocked, I was surprised, and I thought to myself that this would never happen if people were talking in each other's presence. A simple glance of your eyes to a person who is next to me will tell me that perhaps that person is not happy by the way the conversation is going, and you adjust and you take a different tack and you alter the pitch of what you're saying. That, certainly with my students, has gone to the dogs, the amount. So if you ask me about the virtual cafe, I think it works, but only to a certain extent, because ultimately what I get to see is that the doctoral researcher is lonely, and lonely means even physically lonely. Most of them would turn up with a dog who is being patted. It speaks volumes as well that you're actually taking a dog to your, or a cat to your session, and that you have no issues with showing the dog or the cat in person to the rest of the team. It is a lonely thing, and the idea that you're joining the session, it's because you want to share that loneliness. I don't think it's sufficient, however, if it does not happen regularly. Once every 4 months is not enough to build a rapport with others. At the moment, we are undertaking fieldwork because I'm an archaeologist by profession. Fieldwork in the sun with a mask on. You can understand and imagine what it's like, okay? And we work until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it has taken a week with people sitting, 2 meters away from each other to start relaxing, showing their concerns. And you can't see the concerns really because half the face is covered. So the facial expression is not telling you everything. The eye communication is fundamental, no, it just becomes you can't see anything. Oh, it's horrible. So it is going to be a challenge. I would like all the professional development program that we deliver, for instance, is done both physically and remotely. I cannot impose it on my colleagues, even because the University of Malta has not yet geared up for the facility to do this without having to stay behind a laptop. In other words, if I want to move, because it's a workshop after all, a workshop entails moving. The performance part of the workshop is as crucial as the message. If we're not geared for that, then I cannot impose it on anybody, and I cannot expect everyone to do it. But I know what's going to happen, that there are many students who cannot travel and cannot attend these workshops in person yet. So I'm going to encourage as many as possible to do so. And also ask my lovely colleagues from the Faculty of Social Wellbeing to continue their exercise. And I'm giving them complete free hand in how they do it. I also know that the Human Resources is offering other workshops on meditation, and this happens to staff mostly. But remember that research support officers at our university, in other words, even postdocs, can take part in these sessions, and they have been very successful because they break this idea that you are on your own. Our workshops, our physical workshops, used to stop for a 20-minute break in between, so to have a coffee, to have a cup of tea, etc. And it's incredible what I used to listen to during those 15 minutes. Oh, I didn't realize that, it would be so difficult to write a literature review. Yeah, why don't you consider this? Why don't you consider that? That meeting, that crucial 15-minute meeting, used to be what students were yearning for. Now, I would like it to be easier, that I don't have to create a workshop. In fact, when the architect told me, what do you need for the doctoral school premise, the area, I said, well, hot desking, rooms which can be booked in order to hold small meetings, and then a place where you can actually be lazy. And by lazy, I mean it in the ancient sense of otium, no? Where you can actually mingle and have idle chatter, because that is crucial, I think, for postgraduate students, masters, to meet doctoral students, and then to meet those crucial postdoctoral fellows who have something to tell you about, look, what, you haven't applied, you haven't done this, you haven't done that, try. But it has to be this. It has to be this. And the physical space is needed. Perhaps I'm showing off my age here, that I belong to a generation where people met. I will say this and stop. I was telling Angie earlier that there are about 40 foreign academies in Rome. These are academies that have their roots in the Grand Tour. When people traveled from Northern Europe, they would come down to Rome to look at classical remains. The French school is possibly the most famous. There's the German Institute. There are many. Romania, Egypt has one. And those institutes of learning are incredible, because architects meet poets, meet writers, meet archaeologists, meet lawyers, meet musicians. The French even have a cooking scholarship, cookery scholarship. That is at the École Française. And they meet and they mingle. And one day you're sitting next to somebody who will tell you, haven't you thought about this idea? Pursue it. In early September, I'm going to publish finally a project of 4 big books, which started off at the British School at Rome in 1999 by somebody who I met by chance on the stairs of the British School, who said, well, you haven't studied this guy? Go in the archives here. Go in the archives. There you're going to find something which will be worthy of study. 20 years later, I'm going to produce the results. It took me a while, admittedly. But if he had not launched the gauntlet, threw the gauntlet at me, I wouldn't have known. So for me, bringing people together, physically if possible, but virtually by all means, is such an obvious thing. Which is why, I told the rector many times, I don't care about the doctoral school being something virtual, because I don't believe in only virtual. We need something else. And I could, obviously, because nobody wants to do the job I do, because it comes at too much hassle. I could convince him, and he was convinced of the need of having that. The talking, the reflection on what we do, not being on your own, realizing that stress is part of the game and how to counteract it. Those of us who have caring responsibilities, elderly mothers, fathers, even an animal at home, you're not on your own. There are many others who are like that. What do you do? A comforting word, even eavesdropped at first, can help. I mean, we're human beings. People became human because they were forced to stick together. The moment we came down trees, around about 4 million years ago, communication was key to make us who we are.
Maybe we need to endorse a mantra: never eat alone or never drink alone.
Yes, agreed.
I just wanted to comment on something else, that particularly related to MSCA, for those that are going to apply for the postdoctoral fellowship, this school is very important, because I always suggest that they have to mention it in the application form, because through all the courses being provided, one can get familiar in advance as well with these courses and list them already as training being proposed. And as well for the career development plan, which was mentioned as a personal development plan. In MSCA jargon is career development plan. It's very important. So for those planning to apply for that call, please do mention the school and have a look, of course, at the courses being provided.
Yes, in fact, what we do when we issue the call for registration in September, we open them first for doctoral students, and then immediately we open them for the research support officers who are postdocs, etc. And we also open them for members of staff at the university who are doing their PhDs abroad, who are not all the time abroad, because ultimately of course, it's called a doctorate school because we could not call it a graduate school, but we think of those who have their own needs, and it has worked so far. I'm quite happy. So.
Comment. I don't know if it can help. Like I remember a time where David Magri, he was before the doctoral school existed, he was doing such initiatives. So he would do a symposium where everybody would talk for 5 minutes about their research in person. And then every Friday he would organize something in Gzira, in one of those bars in Gzira where researchers come together. I mean, now that we're opening up again, maybe it could be an idea until, I mean, I agree with the point to have a space, but maybe it could be something in the interim.
Yes, I am hoping that the student representatives on the doctoral school board can push the initiative. If, of course, we had the premises, I would be happy to put the money for such events to happen, etc., etc. Getting the students, and I call them students, I should be calling them researchers, I know, but forgive me for that. But if the students had to adopt and make it theirs, of course, you can't make theirs something which does not exist physically. If you had a space, even if it's a tiny room, you know, this happens with student associations the world over, and talking for just a few minutes would be very helpful.
Interdisciplinary is very important because also, you know, for, as we talked this morning, you know, for Marie Skłodowska-Curie, it's crucial to have interdisciplinary.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. When I did the symposium a couple of months ago, I realized that there were many students who were presenting their work about COVID-19. And to me, it made sense that even though I had two sociologists who were talking about COVID-19, I would put them together with a group of medics. And I had complaints. They said, no, because I'm not together with my group. I said, but you can share each other's experience. And that's when I got the idea of getting critical friends to react to what they were saying. It was a win-win situation for me that way. Good, thank you. Good, thank you.
Just a very, 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 very quick comment on what Angie just suggested. I heard something that the Commission is organizing something like that in Brussels. I don't know what they call them, but something pub research related or beer research related. I don't remember, but I really found the idea so cool, where they don't fund anything. It's just that they have some premises that they're promoting. I don't know what kind of agreement they have there, but they just gather all the researchers over beer or cocktail or something very, very informal. You know, and they just discuss there, and I really love the idea, but it's very difficult to organize it, I guess. From my point of view, you know, but it's possible. It's possible. Maybe at the university, it's rather more easy. Yeah.
What we are doing, because I didn't mention it, of course, the doctoral school is also a support structure for academics, for the supervisors. And in the beginning, we started with the students, and now the students are on our side because they realize that all of a sudden there's a big structure that can help them beyond the supervisors and beyond the faculty. Now, of course, they're telling the supervisors what is being done. And very often I am told, I get a message from the supervisors and they said, where did you get this idea that I am obliged to do six supervisory meetings a year? And I say, it's in the regulations. I'm not saying something new. And I said, oh, so now what we have started is training for supervisory teams, getting critical friends from abroad to reflect on the challenges of supervision, etc. Because to me, a meeting, of course, the researchers can meet on their own because then they can talk about anything. But if we can bring on board some supervisors too, some academics, I think it would be brilliant. Some of them are so nice, it's not an issue. Others, of course, have a different style of supervision, which is a bit standoffish, but it doesn't matter. If you get one or two, and usually these are the people who turn up at our symposium, who don't even have students of their own, but can contribute in a discussion. Yeah, they're called either paper bag or meeting over a beer. Yeah, I mean, for me, it used to be normal when I did my PhD many million years ago. You know, I mean, it was. I wouldn't go with my supervisor because I would have killed him probably, but I would meet with other students without any problems whatsoever. Anyway, thank you for your feedback as well. Thank you.